My name is Abigail Carson, but that's not the name my parents gave me. In fact, over the past 3 years, I've had so many names that sometimes I forget which one was really mine. Today, as I wipe down the counter of this small diner in Burlington, Vermont, for the 5th time this hour, I realize I've grown accustomed to this version of myself, the invisible woman. The one who serves coffee and smiles at strangers without ever revealing that every door that opens makes my heart race, every new customer a potential threat. But I didn't start out like this. 3 years ago, I was an assistant to a federal judge in Manhattan, wore high heels, and had an apartment with a view of Central Park. My father, Michael Carson, was an accountant, one of the best, actually. He worked for import companies, mostly Italian ones, and always told me that numbers never lie. Only the people who manipulate them do. I was 12 when he disappeared. My mother told me he'd run off with clients' money, that he was a thief, a coward. I spent 15 years believing that, carrying the shame of the Carson surname like an invisible scar. Then, on a March night, everything changed. I was working late at an upscale Italian restaurant in Tribeca, a side gig to pay the bills while studying law. The place was frequented by men in expensive suits who spoke in low voices and left generous tips. I knew not to ask questions. That night, I was clearing tables when I heard raised voices coming from the private room in the back. I should have left. I should have pretended I heard nothing. But curiosity, or perhaps fate, made me stop. I saw Angelo Bianchi, a name I knew from the newspapers, pointing a gun at 2 men on their knees. He was speaking in Italian, but I understood enough. Betrayal, stolen money, disrespect. The shots were muffled, professional, executed with the coldness of someone who'd done it hundreds of times. I didn't scream. My body simply froze, and when our eyes met through the crack in the door, I knew my life as Abigail Reynolds was over. The FBI found me before the Bianchis did. They offered protection in exchange for testimony. They said Angelo Bianchi was untouchable, that no one had ever testified against him and survived, but I would be different. They had a program, resources, dedicated agents. I believed them. I testified. I told everything I saw in that federal courtroom, with Angelo staring at me from the defense table, as if memorizing every detail of my face for a future reckoning. But my testimony wasn't enough. Expensive lawyers found loopholes, defense witnesses lied under oath, and Angelo Bianchi walked free. I, on the other hand, entered the witness protection program. New identity, new city, new life. Except the new life lasted only 8 months. One night, I returned to my safe house in Cleveland and found 2 men waiting for me in the living room. Men that only my FBI agents knew how to find. Agent Patricia Wright saved me that night. She pulled me out through the service exit, shoved $1,000 in cash into my hand, and said just one word: run. So I ran. From Cleveland to Chicago, from Chicago to Minneapolis, from Minneapolis to Burlington. 3 years, 3 cities, 3 versions of myself, each one more faded than the last. I learned not to make friends, not to tell stories, to be forgettable. The diner where I work now belongs to a 70-year-old man who barely looks at me. Perfect. Today is December 23rd, and Burlington is being swallowed by the worst blizzard in decades. The news talks of closed roads, power outages, people trapped in their homes. I should have closed the diner hours ago, but something kept me here. Maybe the loneliness of the holidays, maybe the fear of returning to my empty apartment and facing another night of insomnia. Frank Davidson, my only customer, finally gets up to leave, leaving a generous tip and a warning to close soon. I'm about to lock the door when it bursts open, bringing a gust of icy wind and snow. The woman who enters is elderly, perhaps in her 70s, with silver hair covered in snowflakes and a coat too thin for the deadly cold outside. Her lips are blue, her hands trembling uncontrollably. I rush to support her before she collapses to the floor. Her skin is ice cold to the touch, and I realize she's in the early stages of hypothermia. I guide her to the nearest booth, wrap her in emergency blankets I keep under the counter, and place a cup of hot tea between her trembling hands. Slowly, color returns to her face, and it's only then that I really see her. She has extraordinary amber eyes, sharp and intelligent despite her apparent frailty. There's something about her that reminds me of the Italian women who used to frequent the restaurant in Manhattan, an innate elegance that even the brutal cold can't erase. She introduces herself as Clara Rosetta, and the Italian surname stirs something in my memory, but I can't place what. Clara tells me she was trying to reach her grandson's house in Lake Manor Estates, the most exclusive area of Burlington, but the taxi dropped her at the wrong address and she got lost in the blizzard. I ask if I can call her grandson, and she agrees, but the calls go straight to voicemail. I tell her she can stay here until the storm passes, that the roads to Lake Manor are certainly closed anyway. As I prepare homemade soup, Clara watches me with an intensity that makes me uncomfortable. It's as if she's evaluating me, weighing something I can't comprehend. When I place the steaming bowl in front of her, she finally speaks, and her words change everything. "You're Michael Carson's daughter, aren't you?" The spoon slips from my hand, clattering against the linoleum floor with a sound that seems to echo for eternity. My first instinct is to deny, to run, to disappear again, but something in her eyes paralyzes me. "How do you know that name?" I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Clara smiles, and it's a sad smile, laden with old memories. "Your father worked for my family for years, dear. He was the best accountant I ever knew. Honest, meticulous, incorruptible, rare qualities in our world." I feel tears burning my eyes. My father didn't run off with stolen money. He didn't abandon my mother and me out of greed. Clara shakes her head slowly, taking my hand with surprising strength. "Your father was murdered, Abigail. Killed because he discovered something he shouldn't have. He was auditing the Bianchi family's accounts when he found evidence of money laundering tied to the murder of a federal prosecutor. An innocent man was framed for that crime. My son, Anthony Rosetta. Your father tried to warn me, but the Bianchis found out first. The world spins around me. 27 years of shame, of carrying the weight of a father I thought was a thief, crumble in seconds. And you?" I ask, trying to process it all. "Who are you, really?" Clara Rosetta looks at me with those penetrating amber eyes and answers with devastating simplicity. "I am the matriarch of the Rosetta family. Some call me La Stratega. And I came to you, Abigail Carson, because you are the only person who can help me clear my son's name and destroy the men who killed your father." The blizzard howls outside, but the cold I feel now comes from within. My life, which I thought I'd left behind, has just caught up with me. Chapter 2. The boss everyone fears. The sound of a powerful engine cutting through the blizzard makes me rise from the chair where I was sitting, still processing Clara's revelations. Through the ice-covered window, I see intense headlights illuminating the snow falling in hypnotic swirls. A massive black Escalade pulls up in front of the diner with the confidence of something that fears nothing. Not even the worst weather conditions Vermont has ever seen. My heart races, not from the fear that's accompanied me for 3 years, but from something different, an anticipation I can't name. The door opens, and a man enters, bringing with him a presence that seems to suck all the oxygen from the room. He's tall, perhaps 6'3", with broad shoulders under a cashmere coat that probably costs more than I make in 6 months. Raven black hair, slightly tousled by the snow, frames a face with strong masculine lines. But it's the eyes that hold me, amber identical to Clara's, and in them I see razor-sharp intelligence, uncontestable power, and something dangerously close to contained violence. "Where is Clara Rosetta?" he asks, and his voice is deep, controlled, the kind that doesn't need to shout to command absolute obedience. It's not a question, it's a demand. Instinctively, I position myself between him and the small office in the back where Clara is resting. "She's sleeping," I reply, keeping my voice steady despite my racing pulse, "and she will continue to do so until I decide otherwise. She had hypothermia when she arrived here. She needs rest." Something changes in his expression, a micro-reaction that lasts less than a second but reveals genuine concern. Then he studies me more closely, and I feel as if I'm being dissected, every secret of mine catalogued and filed in that obviously brilliant mind. "You know who I am?" he asks, and it's not arrogance. It's strategic assessment. He needs to know if I'm aware of the danger I represent by challenging him. "I know exactly who you are, Mr. Rosetta," I reply, using the formal title deliberately. "Your grandmother told me you're a man of honor. Prove it." For a moment, something that could be amusement flickers in those amber eyes. So quickly, I might have imagined it. Then he does something unexpected. He turns to the 2 men who entered behind him, men I hadn't even noticed in my fixation on him, and says simply, "Wait in the car." The men hesitate, exchanging uncertain glances, clearly uncomfortable leaving their boss alone with a stranger. "I said," he repeats, and this time his voice carries a cutting edge that brooks no disobedience. "Wait in the car." They leave immediately, and I realize I've just witnessed a demonstration of absolute power. Dante Rosetta doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to threaten. His authority is so intrinsic that one word from him is law. He removes his coat, revealing a suit that's probably Italian and custom-made, and sits in the booth I indicate, moving with a fluid grace that belies his size. "Coffee?" I ask, trying to regain some sense of normalcy in this utterly abnormal situation. He nods, and as I prepare 2 cups, I feel his gaze on me, heavy and analytical. When I place the coffee in front of him and sit across the table, he takes a sip and his eyebrows rise slightly in surprise. "Good coffee," he comments, and there's genuine approval in his voice. "Not what I expected to find in Vermont. I learned from my father," I reply before I can stop myself, and immediately regret revealing something personal. But Dante Rosetta takes that information and stores it. I see it in his eyes. "Your father," he repeats thoughtfully. "Michael Carson. My grandmother told me about him. A man of principles in a world that punishes principles." The way he says it, with genuine respect and perhaps a touch of melancholy, completely disarms me. This man, whom the newspapers describe as the boss of one of New England's most powerful organized crime families, is speaking of my father with more honor than my own mother ever showed. He was innocent, I ask, needing to hear it from someone else, needing to confirm what Clara told me. "Your father? Completely. Mine? Completely as well." Dante leans forward, and for the first time I see real emotion break through that mask of control. Anthony Rosetta spent 20 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. He died there, defending a code of honor that the system sworn to protect him betrayed. He never implicated others, never made deals, never broke the silence. He died believing his name would never be cleared. There's pain in his voice, an old wound that never healed properly. "Then we have something in common," I say softly, surprising myself with the vulnerability. "We've both been betrayed by those who swore to protect us." His eyes meet mine, and in that moment, something passes between us. A recognition, a connection forged in similar losses and shared injustices. "My grandmother," he says finally, "has a habit of recruiting people. She sees potential where others see only victims. She believes you can help us clear my father's name and destroy the Bianchis in the process. And you?" I ask, holding his gaze despite my racing heart. "What do you believe?" He studies me for a long moment, and I feel as if I'm being weighed on some invisible scale. "I believe you're too intelligent to be serving coffee in Vermont. I believe you're hiding something beyond fear. And I believe that if my grandmother trusts you, there's a reason I don't fully understand yet. But I'm willing to find out." Before I can respond, Clara appears in the office doorway, leaning on the frame but with bright, alert eyes. Dante is at her side in seconds, supporting her with a gentleness that violently contrasts with the hardness he projects. "Nonna," he says, and the Italian word for grandmother sounds like a caress. "You should be resting." "I'll rest when we're safe," she replies with surprising firmness. "And we won't be safe until Abigail knows the whole truth." Clara sits in the booth, and Dante remains standing beside her, a protective posture that reveals more about his character than 1,000 words could. She pulls something from her coat pocket, a small USB drive that she places on the table between us like a grenade about to explode. "This device," she says, "is worth more than the entire Bianchi empire. It contains bank records of 12 corrupt federal agents, recordings of Angelo Bianchi ordering the murder of prosecutor William Harding, proof that Anthony Rosetta was framed, and the location of $200 million in laundered money." The number makes me dizzy. 200 million. It's such an absurd amount I can barely process it. Dante remains impassive, but I see his fingers tighten slightly on the back of the booth where Clara is sitting. "Nonna," he says low, "this is too dangerous. If the Bianchis find out we have this, they won't stop until they get it back." "They already know," Clara replies calmly. "Why do you think I came to Vermont in the worst blizzard in decades? I needed to reach you before they reached me." My mind works quickly, connecting dots. "You didn't get lost in the blizzard," I say slowly, understanding dawning like cold water. "You found me deliberately." Clara has the decency to look slightly guilty. "Your father, Michael, compiled this evidence before he was killed. He sent me a copy, knowing I'd wait for the right moment. He left it for me with one instruction. When my daughter is ready, give her the truth and the choice." Tears burn my eyes, but I refuse to let them fall. "What choice?" I ask, though I already know the answer. Dante answers, his voice soft but relentless. "Run again. Live the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, always hiding, or stay and fight with us. Use this evidence to destroy the men who killed your father and ruined countless lives. But you need to understand, Abigail. If you choose to stay, you enter our world, and there's no going back." I look at the USB drive on the table, so small and insignificant in appearance, but carrying the weight of destroyed lives and buried truths. I think of my father, the man I spent 27 years believing was a coward, only to discover he was a hero. I think of 3 years running, 3 years being invisible, 3 years without a real life, and I think of Dante Rosetta, this dangerous and powerful man who looks at me as if I'm something more than just a frightened witness. I pick up the USB drive, feeling its insignificant weight in my palm. My father died for this truth, I say, my voice steady despite the fear I feel. I won't hide from it. Something changes on Dante's face, an approval that warms something inside me that's been frozen for years. Then welcome to the family, Abigail Carson, he says, and I know my life has just changed irrevocably. Chapter 3. When the past knocks on the door. The temperature in the diner seems to drop 10 degrees when Leo Santini enters through the back door, shaking snow from his shoulders. I recognize him instantly, and my blood freezes in my veins. Leo was one of the FBI agents assigned to my protection, one of the men I trusted with my life. Seeing his face here now, beside Dante Rosetta, makes my world tilt dangerously. Dante notices my reaction immediately, his amber eyes narrowing as he assesses the sudden tension in my body. Leo looks at me with an expression I can't decipher, something between regret and resignation. Abigail Reynolds, he says, using my real name for the first time in 3 years. Or should I call you Carson now that you know the truth about your father? Dante moves subtly, positioning himself between us, a protective gesture that doesn't go unnoticed. You two know each other, he states, not asks, and there's a dangerous edge to his voice. Special Agent Leo Santini, I say, forcing the words through my tight throat. Organized Crime Task Force, FBI, one of the men responsible for keeping protected witnesses alive. I pause, letting the weight of the unspoken accusation hang in the air, except when the protection comes from agents working for the same people we testified against. Leo has the decency to look uncomfortable, but he doesn't deny it. Ex-agent, he corrects, and there's bitterness in his voice. I left the bureau 2 years ago when I discovered half my division was on the Bianchi's payroll. I look at Dante, confusion mixed with fear. He works for you now. Dante nods once, his eyes never leaving my face. Leo came to me with information about corruption in the FBI, information that cost him his career and nearly his life. He's head of security for the Rosetta family now, and one of the few men I trust completely. Leo steps forward, ignoring Dante's defensive posture. Abigail, I didn't know about the safe house in Cleveland. You have to believe that. When I found out your location had been leaked, I tried to warn you, but Patricia got there first. She was one of the few honest agents left. Patricia Wright's name brings a wave of memories. The woman who saved me, who sacrificed her career to give me a chance to survive. Where is she now, I ask, needing to know if the woman who saved me is safe. Leo exchanges a glance with Dante before answering. Dead. 6 months after helping you escape. Car accident, officially. But we found evidence the brakes were sabotaged. The news hits me like a punch in the gut. Patricia is dead because of me. Another life destroyed by my decision to testify, to do the right thing. Clara, who had remained silent, finally speaks. That's why we need to act now, dear. Every day that passes, more people die to protect the Bianchi's secrets. Your father, Patricia Wright, my son Anthony, countless others. This USB drive is our only chance to expose the truth before more innocent blood is spilled. But Leo isn't done. There's something else you need to know, Abigail. About your father. My heart races again. What more could there be? Michael Carson wasn't just an accountant, Leo continues, pulling up a chair and sitting as if the weight of what he's about to reveal is too much to bear standing. He was an FBI informant. Voluntary, not coerced. When he discovered the irregularities in the Bianchi's accounts, he came to us. He wanted to do the right thing, expose the corruption, protect innocent people. Then why did he die? I ask, my voice breaking despite my efforts to keep it steady. If he was working with the FBI, why didn't they protect him? Leo closes his eyes briefly, and I see genuine guilt on his face, because the agent in charge of his case, the man who was supposed to protect him, was Carlo Bianchi's cousin. Your father was betrayed by the same institution that swore to serve him. By the time we realized what had happened, it was too late. They found his body in the Hudson River 3 days later. The room spins around me. My father didn't just discover the truth. He tried to do something about it. He was brave, honorable, everything my mother told me he wasn't, and he died for it. Dante moves to my side, his presence solid and strangely comforting. Your father was a man of honor in a world that punishes honor, he says softly, just as you're becoming a woman of honor. The choice you face now is the same one he faced. Run and live with the guilt, or stay and fight for what's right. Before I can respond, Leo stands abruptly, hand going to the gun in his holster. We have company. 3 vehicles, Bianchi configuration, approaching down Main Street. They're checking every building. Dante doesn't look surprised, as if he'd expected this. How much time do we have? He asks, already moving to the window. 5 minutes, maybe less, Leo replies, speaking quickly into his radio to coordinate with other men apparently positioned around the perimeter. Clara stands, moving with surprising agility for someone who was on the brink of hypothermia hours ago. Abigail, she says, taking my hands in hers, you need to understand what's about to happen. The Bianchis didn't come just for you. They came for the USB drive. They know I have it and they know I'm here. If you leave now with Dante, there's an underground passage that leads to the tunnel system under the city. You can escape. And you? I ask, already knowing I won't like the answer. I stay, Clara says simply. I'm old. I've lived my life. But you and my grandson, you have a future. You have the chance to finish what your father and my son started. I won't leave you, I say firmly, surprising myself. You came to me, trusted me with the truth about my father. I won't abandon you now. Dante looks at me with an intensity that makes my heart skip a beat. Do you understand what you're saying? If you stay, if you fight with us, the Bianchis will hunt you for the rest of your life. No more hiding places, no more anonymity. You become part of this war. I look at the USB drive still in my hand. Think of my father dying alone in the river. Think of Patricia Wright and her sabotaged car. Think of 3 years running and hiding like a scared animal. I've spent 3 years invisible, I say, my voice gaining strength. 3 years without a life, without purpose, without anything but fear. My father died fighting for something bigger than himself. I won't dishonor his memory by running now. Something changes on Dante's face, a subtle but profound transformation. He extends his hand, and when I take it, I feel calluses that speak of hard work despite his obvious wealth, strength that could crush but chooses gentleness. Then you fight with us, he says, and it's not a question. I fight with you, I confirm, and I know I've just crossed a line there's no returning from. Leo interrupts the moment. They're 2 blocks away. We need to get into position. Dante finally releases my hand, and I immediately miss the warmth. He moves to a bag Leo brought, pulling out a gun he checks with practiced efficiency. You know how to shoot, he asks me. My father taught me, I reply, the memory surfacing out of nowhere. He took me to the shooting range every Saturday when I was a teenager, said a woman needed to know how to defend herself. Dante smiles, and it's the first time I see a genuinely warm expression on his face. Your father was wiser than I imagined. He hands me a smaller gun, a 9mm Glock that fits perfectly in my hand. I hope you don't have to use this, he says, but if you do, don't hesitate. Men like the Bianchis don't give second chances. Clara positions herself behind the counter, surprisingly calm for someone about to face professional killers. Leo dims some lights, creating strategic shadows, while speaking low into his radio, coordinating positions. Dante stays near the window, watching the street through a slit in the curtain. I see the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers flex around the gun, and I realize this man, for all his danger, is genuinely concerned for our safety. The headlights appear through the blizzard, 3 black vehicles sliding down the street like sharks scenting blood. They stop in front of the diner and my heart pounds. Men get out, 6 that I can count, all in dark coats, all moving with the coordination of trained professionals. One of them, older than the others, walks in front. Even through the snow, I recognize Carlo Bianchi from trial photos, Angelo's nephew, family capo, and the man who probably ordered my father's death. Dante steps away from the window, positioning himself to cover both the front door and protect me if needed. Remember, he says low, in our world, words are weapons as powerful as bullets. Carlo will try to negotiate first. It's protocol. But make no mistake, he'd kill us all without hesitation if he thought he could get away with it. The door opens, and Carlo Bianchi enters my diner, bringing with him the scent of snow and danger. Chapter 4. The Deadly Game of Chess. Carlo Bianchi enters as if he owns the place, shaking snow from the shoulders of his Italian wool coat with studied gestures. He's older than he appeared in trial photos, perhaps in his mid-50s, with graying hair slicked back and dark eyes that assess everything with a predator's precision. There's an elegance to him, the kind of refinement that comes from generations of wealth and power. But beneath that polished facade, I see the same coldness I saw in Angelo Bianchi's eyes that terrible night in Manhattan. He initially ignores my presence completely, focusing all his attention on Dante. Don Rosetta, he says, using the formal title with a slight nod that's both respectful and condescending. I apologize for the intrusion on neutral territory, but there's a delicate situation that requires immediate resolution. His voice is smooth, polite, the kind that could be discussing legitimate business if not for the context. Dante remains seated, a deliberate power position that forces Carlo to stand like a supplicant. Capo Bianchi, he replies, his tone perfectly neutral. You brought 8 armed men for a delicate situation? That seems more like a declaration of war than a courtesy visit. There's steel beneath his words, a veiled warning that anyone with half a brain would recognize as dangerous. Carlo smiles, but there's no warmth in the expression. Just precautions, Don Rosetta. We live in uncertain times after all. He finally turns to me, and I feel the weight of his gaze like something physical. And Miss Reynolds. What a surprise to find you alive after all this time. Many of us assumed you'd met an unfortunate end. There's thinly veiled threat in his words, a suggestion that my survival is an anomaly he intends to correct. My name is Carson, I reply, keeping my voice steady despite the fear I feel, and I'm under Rosetta protection. Carlo laughs, a humorless sound that echoes through the empty diner. Rosetta protection? Your family can barely hold Boston, Dante. Ever since your father, he pauses deliberately, met his unfortunate end in prison, the Rosettas have been a shadow of what they were. Do you really think you can protect a federal witness from the Bianches? Dante rises slowly, and the movement is so fluid and controlled it's more threatening than if he'd leaped up. Finish that sentence, Carlo, he says low, and find out why my father taught me that respect is earned with blood when necessary. The temperature in the room seems to drop further. Leo shifts subtly in the shadows, hand near his gun. Clara remains still behind the counter, but her amber eyes gleam with an intensity that reminds me this woman has survived decades in the most brutal world imaginable. Carlo raises his hands in a placating gesture, but I see cold calculation in his eyes. I didn't come for conflict, Don Rosetta. I came to make an offer. He gestures to one of his men, who brings a metal briefcase and places it on the nearest table. Opening it reveals neatly stacked piles of $100 bills. $2 million, Carlo announces, for Miss Carson and any item she might be holding. Everyone walks out alive, everyone gets rich, and we keep the peace between our families. I look at the money, more than I've ever seen in my life, and feel nausea. This is the price Carlo Bianchi puts on my life, on the truth about my father, on justice for all the people his family destroyed. $2 million, as if that could buy silence about murder, corruption, and decades of crimes. Dante doesn't even glance at the briefcase. You insult my intelligence and my honor with that offer, he says, his voice cutting like broken glass. Abigail Carson has invoked the right of asylum under my protection, Dante continues, now using terms I don't fully understand but that clearly carry significant weight. By the Commission's law, she is untouchable. Any action against her is action against the Rosetta family. Are you prepared to go to war, Carlo? Because I am. The declaration hangs in the air like gunpowder smoke. Carlo snaps the briefcase shut with a violent click. The Commission won't protect a declining family over one. He hesitates, searching for the right word. Problematic witness, especially when that witness possesses something that doesn't belong to her. His eyes fix on me with laser intensity. You have something of mine, Miss Carson. Something an old lady might have given you. I strongly suggest you return it. I step forward, surprising myself with my courage. I have no idea what you're talking about. I lie softly. I'm just a diner manager who offered shelter to an elderly woman during a blizzard. If that's a crime, then half of Vermont is guilty. Carlo studies me, trying to decide if I'm bluffing. Then Clara speaks for the first time, her voice carrying an authority that makes even Carlo pause. Stop pretending, Carlo, she says, emerging from behind the counter with the posture of a queen. You know exactly why I came to Vermont. You know what I have. And you know that if anything happens to me, to my grandson, or to Abigail, copies of that evidence will be sent to every Don on the Commission, every honest federal prosecutor still out there, and every major newspaper in the country. Carlo pales visibly. You're bluffing, he says, but there's uncertainty in his voice now. Clara smiles, and it's a smile that must have terrified enemies for decades. Am I? Then why are you here in person, Carlo? Why not send your soldiers? Because you know what I have can destroy not just your family, but the entire structure of corruption that sustains your empire. Bank records, recordings, documents, all meticulously compiled by an honest man your family murdered. Michael Carson, Clara continues, was smarter than you imagined. He didn't just uncover your money laundering operations. He tracked every transaction, every bribe, every ordered murder. And when he realized he'd be killed, he ensured that information reached the right hands. My hands. And now, his daughter's hands. The revelation hits Carlo like a physical blow. She is Carson's daughter, he whispers, understanding and horror mixed in his expression. That's why you sought her out. That's why you're here. Exactly, Clara confirms. Abigail has every right to know the truth about her father, and every right to decide what to do with the evidence he died protecting. Carlo turns to Dante, desperation beginning to crack his composure. You don't understand what you're doing. This doesn't just affect the Bianches. There are 12 federal agents in that evidence, including the current director of the Organized Crime Division. You think they'll let this come to light? Dante crosses his arms, unmoved. Then maybe it's time to clean house. My father spent 20 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit, because men like you bought the system. How many other innocents are rotting in cells while the real criminals wear FBI badges? Carlo's justice is swift and brutal. Justice? You want to talk about justice? Your father was a criminal, Dante. Maybe he didn't kill Prosecutor Harding, but he wasn't innocent. Dante moves so fast I barely see it, his hand grabbing Carlo's throat and slamming him against the wall. My father, he growls, was 10 times the man you'll ever be. He had honor, he had principles, he had loyalty, things your family forgot even existed. Leo is at Dante's side in second, gun pointed at Carlo's men who instinctively stepped forward. Nobody moves, Leo orders, his voice carrying the authority of years in the FBI. Your bosses are having a conversation. Let them finish. Dante releases Carlo, who slumps against the wall coughing. You have a choice, Carlo, Dante says, his voice back to icy control. Walk out now and face the commission tomorrow, when the evidence is presented. Or try something here and don't live to see sunrise. We have 15 snipers positioned around this building, all with orders to shoot at the slightest sign of hostility. Carlo looks around, finally realizing he's completely surrounded and outmatched. This doesn't end here, he says, straightening his coat with trembling hands. Angelo won't let this slide. Then tell Angelo, I reply, my voice surprisingly steady, that the daughter of the man he murdered is no longer running. Tell him the truth is coming, and there's not enough money in the world to buy it or bury it again. Carlo glares at me with pure hatred, but also with something that might be fear. You don't know what you're getting into, girl. I know exactly, I reply. I'm getting into the same fight my father fought. The difference is, this time, we're going to win. Carlo leaves, his men following quickly, and the silence that remains is deafening. My legs start to shake, the adrenaline finally draining from my system. Dante is at my side immediately, his hand steady on my elbow stabilizing me. You were incredible, he says softly, and there's genuine admiration in his voice. Clara approaches, taking my free hand. Your father would be proud, dear. You have his courage, his intelligence, and now, you have the chance to finish what he started. Leo hangs up the radio after a quick conversation. They're leaving. No incidents. But that was just the first round. The Bianchis will be back, and next time it won't be to negotiate. I look at the 3 faces around me, these people who were strangers mere hours ago and are now my allies in a war I barely understand. So what do we do now? I ask. Dante smiles, and it's a predator's smile. Now, Abigail Carson, we take the fight to them. And we show the Bianchis why the Rosettas should never be underestimated. The blizzard rages on outside, but inside the diner, I feel something new growing. It's no longer fear. It's determination. It's purpose. It's the feeling of finally, after 3 years of running, being ready to fight. Chapter 5. Entering the underworld. 3 days after the confrontation at the diner, I find myself in a place I never imagined, the Rosetta Mansion in Lake Manor Estates. The property is stunning, a stone and glass structure rising majestically over Lake Champlain, with views of waters that shimmer like liquid silver under the winter sun. It's the kind of place I see in architecture magazines, not the kind where people like me, daughters of murdered accountants and witnesses on the run, should be. Clara has installed me in a suite on the 2nd floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the frozen lake. The decor is elegant yet welcoming, cream and gold tones speaking of old wealth, not new ostentation. There's a private library adjacent to the bedroom, filled with books in Italian and English, and a marble bathroom larger than my old apartment entirely. It's surreal, like I've stepped through a portal into a completely different life. But I'm not here for vacation. In the last 72 hours, my life has transformed in ways I'm still processing. The Commission, the governing council of New York's 5 organized crime families, has called an emergency meeting. Carlo Bianchi has been summoned to explain his violation of Vermont's neutral territory, and I, Abigail Carson, am at the center of it all, holding evidence that could topple not just one crime family, but an entire network of federal corruption. Dante explained how it works. The Commission operates under a set of rules established decades ago, agreements that keep peace between families that would otherwise be in constant war. Neutral territory is sacred, places where legitimate business can be conducted without fear of violence. Vermont is one such territory, established in the Champlain Accord of 1985. Carlo violated that accord by bringing armed men to threaten me, and that has consequences. I'm in the library when Dante finds me, flipping through an Italian history book I'm not really reading. He knocks lightly on the open door before entering, a gesture of courtesy I appreciate. "You're settling in well," he observes, glancing around the room before focusing on me. Clara's worried this is all too much, too fast. There's genuine concern in his voice, a softness that contrasts with the hardness he shows the world. "I'm okay," I reply, closing the book. Or at least, I will be. I'm still processing everything. 3 days ago, I was serving coffee and trying to be invisible. Now I'm in a lakeside mansion, entangled in organized crime politics, and holding evidence that could bring down corrupt federal agents. It's a lot to take in. Dante sits in the leather armchair across from mine, his movements graceful despite his size. "You can still walk away," he says, and I know he means it. "I can give you a new identity. Enough money to start over anywhere in the world. Lifelong protection. You don't have to be involved in this." I look at him, really look, and see something in his amber eyes I hadn't seen before. Vulnerability, perhaps, or fear that I'll leave, but also respect, the kind that comes from recognizing strength in another person. "I don't want to walk away," I say, and I realize it's true. For the first time in 3 years, I feel like I have purpose. My father died trying to do the right thing. I won't waste his sacrifice by running now. Besides, I add with a small smile, your grandmother would scare me if I tried to leave. She's already planning to teach me Italian and how to make homemade pasta. Dante laughs, a rich, genuine sound that completely transforms his face. My grandmother has decided to adopt you, he says with obvious affection. When Clara Rosetta decides something, the universe usually adjusts to accommodate. He leans forward, elbows on knees, expression turning serious. The commission meeting is tomorrow. They'll want to see the evidence, verify its authenticity. You'll have to testify, tell your story. It won't be easy. These men are dangerous, powerful, and they don't like having their business exposed. I've testified before, I remind him, against Angelo Bianchi, in federal court, with him staring at me like he was planning my death. I survived that. I can survive a room full of crime bosses, but there's a difference, Dante says softly. In court, there were judges, lawyers, rules. At the commission, there's only power and the will to use it. If they decide you're a greater threat than the Bianchis, no protection in the world will save you. Then why take me there? I ask, feeling a chill run down my spine. Why expose me to that danger? Because, Dante replies, meeting my eyes, you're the only person who can make this work. You're not part of our world. You have no divided loyalties, no reason to lie. You're the daughter of an honest man who was murdered for doing the right thing. Your story, your truth, has power none of us possess. And because, he hesitates, I believe in you. The words hang between us, loaded with meaning neither of us is ready to name. Clara chooses that moment to enter, carrying a tray with coffee and Italian cookies. Interrupting something, she asks with a knowing smile, glancing between us. Just discussing tomorrow's meeting, Dante replies, but I see a slight flush on his cheeks that makes me smile despite the tension. Clara sets the tray on the low table between us and sits with the grace of someone much younger. Abigail, dear, she says, taking my hand. I need to tell you something about your father, something even Dante doesn't fully know. My heart races. What else could there be? Michael wasn't just an accountant, Clara begins. He was my friend. When my husband, Salvatore, was building the Rosetta Empire, Michael was the man who ensured everything was done correctly, legally whenever possible. He had principles my husband respected, even when those principles complicated business. Clara pauses, her eyes distant with memories. When Salvatore died and Anthony took over, things changed. My son wanted to expand, make partnerships with other families. That's how we got involved with the Bianchis. Michael warned me, said Angelo Bianchi was dangerous, that he didn't respect the old rules. But Anthony didn't listen. Then came the murder of Prosecutor Harding, Clara continues, her voice tightening. Anthony was framed, arrested, convicted. Michael knew it was a lie, knew the Bianchis had done it and pinned it on my son. So he started investigating, using his connections, his financial expertise, to track the money. It took years, but he built an airtight case. And when he was ready to take it to the FBI, the Bianchis found out. Tears burned my eyes. He knew he was going to die. I ask, my voice breaking. Clara nods, squeezing my hand. He came to me 3 days before he disappeared, gave me the flash drive, made me promise to wait for the right moment, to find you when you were ready. He said, Clara pauses, her own voice thick, tell my Abby that everything I did was for love. Love for her, love for the truth, love for the idea that the world can be better. I can't hold back the tears now. They fall freely as I finally, after 27 years, understand who my father really was. Not a coward who ran, but a hero who stayed. Not a thief, but a man of principles who paid the ultimate price for them. Dante moves to sit beside me, his arm around my shoulders in a surprisingly tender gesture of comfort. Your father and mine, he says softly, were rare men. Men who believed honor means something, even in a world that punishes honor. They deserve for us to finish what they started. They deserve justice, even if it comes too late to save them. I wipe my tears, feeling something harden inside me. Determination, perhaps, or anger finally finding productive direction. Tell me about the commission, I say, my voice steady again. Tell me everything I need to know for tomorrow. I want to be prepared. I want to look these men in the eye and make them understand that the era of impunity is over. Dante and Clara exchange a glance, and I see approval on both their faces. Then Dante begins teaching me about the underworld I've just entered, and I realize my education in a world I never knew existed is only beginning. We spend hours talking, Dante explaining the hierarchy of the families, the protocols governing interaction, the consequences of violation. I learn about dons and capos, about soldiers and associates, about the difference between legitimate businesses and criminal operations. I learn that there are rules even in organized crime, codes of conduct that, when broken, result in severe punishments. It's a complex world, brutal in its honesty about what it is. But I also learn something unexpected. I learn that there is honor even among criminals, that loyalty means something profound in this world, that family is not just blood, but choice. I see it in the way Dante speaks of his father, in the way Clara describes her late husband, in the way Leo, the former FBI agent, has found a place where he can finally trust the people around him. It's disturbing and comforting at the same time. When night falls over the lake, turning the water into a black mirror reflecting the stars, I feel like I've crossed some invisible threshold. I'm no longer just Abigail Carson, the witness on the run. I'm becoming something new, something I don't yet have a name for. Someone who belongs in this strange and dangerous world. Someone who chose to stay and fight instead of run and hide. And for the first time in 3 years, I feel like I'm finally in the right place. Chapter 6. The meeting that changes everything. The room where the commission meets is in a nondescript building in Manhattan's financial district, disguised as the offices of an import company. It's deliberately ordinary on the outside, the kind of place you'd pass without a second glance. But inside, it's opulent in an old-world way, with dark wood paneling, crystal chandeliers, and a massive mahogany table that's probably 100 years old. This is the room where the most powerful men in American organized crime make decisions that affect millions of lives. I'm seated beside Dante, with Clara on my other side, facing 5 men who represent the 5 families. I recognize Angelo Bianchi immediately, his cold eyes studying me with the same hatred I saw in court 3 years ago. Beside him is Carlo, looking significantly less confident than he did at the diner. The other 3 dons are unknown to me, but they all share the same aura of absolute power, men accustomed to having their orders followed without question. The oldest don, a man of perhaps 80 with completely white hair and surprisingly kind eyes, speaks first. I am Vittorio Castellano. He introduces himself, his voice carrying a faint Sicilian accent. I serve as mediator for the commission when there are disputes between families. Today we are here to resolve a serious matter. Carlo Bianchi is accused of violating neutral territory. Dante Rosetta brings evidence of corruption that affects all our operations. And you, Miss Carson, are at the center of it all. I meet his gaze without flinching. I didn't ask to be here, Don Castellano. I didn't ask to witness a murder 3 years ago. I didn't ask to discover my father was killed for trying to do the right thing. But here I am, and I have information all of you need to hear. Vittorio nods thoughtfully. Then share it, child. Tell us your story and let the commission decide what to do with it. I take a deep breath and begin. I tell them about that night in Manhattan, about seeing Angelo Bianchi execute 2 men. I tell them about testifying, about entering protection, about discovering half the FBI agents assigned to protect me were working for the Bianchi. I tell them about 3 years on the run, about finding Clara in the blizzard, about learning the truth about my father. My voice stays steady through it all, even as I see Angelo clench his fists with growing rage. Then Clara takes over, placing the flash drive on the table. This device contains 20 years of evidence compiled by Michael Carson, bank records showing payments from Angelo Bianchi to 12 federal agents, recordings of Angelo ordering the murder of Prosecutor Harding, documents proving Anthony Rosetta was framed for the crime, and the location of $200 million in laundered money the Bianchis hid in offshore accounts. The silence that follows is absolute. The 5 dons stare at the flash drive like it's a bomb about to detonate, which, in a way, it is. Finally, one of the other dons, a younger man with a scar on his face, speaks. If this is true, Angelo, you didn't just break our rules, you put all our operations at risk. Corrupt federal agents are useful, but only when their corruption stays secret. You exposed them, you exposed us. Angelo stands violently, his chair scraping the floor. This is a lie, a fabrication by a desperate family trying to regain relevance. Michael Carson was a thief, Anthony Rosetta was guilty, and this girl, he points at me with an accusing finger, is a discredited witness who vanished from protection. Why should we believe anything she says? Because, a new voice says from the door, I can confirm every word. Everyone turns to see Leo Santini entering, carrying a thick folder. I am former Special Agent Leo Santini, FBI Organized Crime Division. I spent 2 years investigating corruption within the Bureau before being forced out. Everything Miss Carson and Mrs. Rosetta have said is true, and I have independent documentation to prove it. Leo places the folder on the table, opening it to reveal stacks of documents. These are internal FBI records showing Miss Carson's safe house location in Cleveland was accessed by unauthorized agents. These are phone records showing communication between those agents and numbers known to belong to Carlo Bianchi. And these, he pulls out a set of photos, are surveillance images showing Special Agent Marcus Riley, Carlo's cousin, meeting with Michael Carson 3 days before his body was found in the Hudson River. The evidence is devastating, irrefutable. I see understanding dawn on the other dons' faces, followed quickly by anger. Vittorio Castellano stands slowly, his expression transformed from gentle to absolutely implacable. Angelo Bianchi, he says formally, you have brought shame to your family and danger to the commission. Your actions violated our most fundamental agreements. Carlo Bianchi, you violated neutral territory and threatened a person under legitimate protection. Both of you must face consequences. Angelo tries to argue, but Vittorio raises a hand, silencing him. The commission will decide your fate in private session. But first, he turns to me. We must discuss what to do with this evidence. Miss Carson, do you understand that if this is made public, not just the Bianchis will fall, but our entire structure will be exposed, federal agents will be arrested, investigations opened, all our operations scrutinized? I understand, I reply calmly. And frankly, I don't care about your operations. I care about justice for my father, for Anthony Rosetta, for Patricia Wright, and all the other innocent people who died because powerful men thought they were above the law. If exposing your structure is the price of justice, then so be it. The Don with the scar laughs, a harsh sound but not without admiration. She's got guts, I'll give her that. Vittorio studies me for a long moment. There is a way, he says finally, to get your justice without destroying everything. The corrupt agents can be exposed selectively, forced to retire or face internal charges. Angelo and Carlo can be removed from their positions, exiled. The laundered money can be used to compensate victims' families, and Anthony Rosetta's name can be cleared through channels that don't expose the entire commission. It's a deal, I realize. A way to get some justice without total war. I look at Dante, seeking guidance. He meets my eyes and nods almost imperceptibly. The choice is mine. I think of my father, of everything he sacrificed. I think of 3 years running. I think of Patricia Wright and her sabotaged car. And I think of all the future victims who could be saved if the corruption is exposed. I have conditions, I say finally. Angelo Bianchi must publicly confess to the murder of Prosecutor Harding and the framing of Anthony Rosetta. The 12 corrupt agents must face criminal prosecution, not just forced retirement. Half of the $200 million must go to a fund for victims of organized crime. And I want full immunity, not just for me, but for everyone who helped me, including Leo Santini and the Rosetta family. Vittorio considers, then looks at the other dons. They converse in rapid Italian too fast for me to fully follow, but I catch enough words to understand they're debating the terms. Finally, Vittorio turns back to me. The commission accepts your conditions, with one addition. You, Miss Carson, must agree never to publicly reveal what you know about our operations beyond what is necessary to prosecute the Bianchis and the corrupt agents. Can you live with that? I can, I agree. And I feel a huge weight lift from my shoulders. Vittorio extends his hand, and when I shake it, I know I've just made a deal with the devil. But it's a deal that brings justice, even if imperfect. Angelo is let out, shouting threats no one takes seriously. Carlo follows, defeated and ruined. And I, Abigail Carson, daughter of a murdered accountant, walk out of the room knowing that finally, after 3 years, I can stop running. Chapter 7. New Beginnings and New Purposes. 6 months have passed since that meeting in Manhattan, and my life has transformed in ways that still surprise me when I wake up in the morning. The diner in Burlington is no more, at least not as it was. Dante bought it and turned it into an upscale cafe called Rosetta's, a place that quickly became the favorite haunt of Vermont's elite. But I'm no longer just a manager serving coffee. I'm the Rosetta family's financial advisor, using the skills I learned studying law and the lessons my father taught me about numbers and honesty. The transformation wasn't easy. I had to learn a whole new world of protocols, understand the legitimate businesses the Rosetta family operates, navigate complex relationships with other families. Clara became my mentor, teaching me not just Italian and how to make pasta, but the subtleties of the politics that govern the underworld. She taught me that real power doesn't come from threats, but from intelligence, from knowing when to speak and when to listen, from building alliances based on mutual respect. Leo stayed on as head of security, but he's also become an unexpected friend. He understands what it's like to straddle two worlds, no longer part of the system he swore to serve, but not entirely comfortable in the world of organized crime either. Together, we've worked on a special project, identifying other witnesses who vanished when their agents were compromised, offering them a chance to start over with real protection. It's our way of honoring Patricia Wright and all the other honest people the system failed. Angelo Bianchi confessed, as promised, though it took significant pressure from the commission to make it happen. He's serving life in prison now, and Anthony Rosetta's name was officially cleared. Clara cried when the news came, tears of relief and sadness mixed, grieving that her son didn't live to see his vindication. We held a proper memorial service, and for the first time in 20 years, Anthony Rosetta was remembered as the honorable man he was. The 12 FBI agents were prosecuted, a scandal that shook the Bureau to its core. The director of the Organized Crime Division resigned, and reforms were implemented to prevent future corruption. It's not perfect. The system still has flaws, but it's a start. And the $100 million that went to the Victims Fund has already helped dozens of families destroyed by organized crime rebuild their lives. As for my relationship with Dante, it's complicated in ways I never could have predicted. There's something between us, a connection that grew from that first night in the blizzard, forged in shared danger and mutual respect. He's different with me than he is with the rest of the world. Softer, more open, willing to show vulnerability he hides from everyone else. And I, who spent 3 years trusting no one, trust him completely. But I also know that loving Dante Rosetta means accepting his world, with all its dangers and moral complexities. It means understanding that the man who holds me so tenderly is also capable of violence when necessary, that the man who makes me laugh also makes decisions that affect lives in ways I prefer not to examine too closely. It's a delicate balance, loving someone whose world operates under rules so different from the ones I was raised to believe in. Today, I'm in the office Dante gave me at the mansion, reviewing contracts for a new legitimate acquisition for the family, when he walks in without knocking. It's a habit of his, this casual familiarity that speaks to how comfortable he's become with me. "You need to see this," he says, placing a newspaper on my desk. The headline makes me smile. Former FBI agent launches foundation to protect vulnerable witnesses. It's Patricia, I realize, reading the article. Or rather, it's the foundation we created in her name, using part of the money recovered from the Bianches. Leo is in the photo, looking uncomfortable with the media attention, but determined. She would have liked this, I say softly, touching the photo, knowing her death wasn't in vain, that it's helping others like me. Dante sits on the edge of my desk, an informal gesture that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. "You made this happen," he says, taking my hand. "You took tragedy and turned it into something positive. Your father would be proud. Clara certainly is. She told me yesterday that you're the granddaughter she always wanted." I smile at that, thinking of the extraordinary woman who has become a mother figure to me. "And you?" I ask, looking up to meet his amber eyes. "Are you proud?" Dante pulls me to my feet, his hands framing my face with a gentleness that still surprises me. "I'm more than proud," he says softly. "I'm in awe. You walked into my world, a world that terrifies most people, and you didn't just survive, you thrived. You've become essential, not just to me, but to the entire family. And you did it while keeping your integrity, your principles, everything that makes you you." Before I can respond, he kisses me, and it's different from the kisses before. Deeper, more promising. When we finally pull apart, we're both breathless. "There's something I need to ask you," Dante says, and there's nervousness in his voice I've never heard before. "In my culture, in my family, there are traditions, ways of doing things that have been passed down for generations, and I'd like to honor those traditions with you, if you're willing." My heart races. "What are you asking, Dante?" He takes a deep breath, and I see real vulnerability on his face. I'm asking if you would consider becoming part of the Rosetta family officially, not just as an advisor or ally, but as my wife. I know it's fast. I know my world is complicated and dangerous, but I also know I don't want to imagine my life without you in it. The proposal leaves me speechless for a moment. 6 months ago, I was serving coffee and hiding from shadows. Now, the most powerful man I know is asking me to marry him, offering me a permanent place in a world I'm still learning to navigate. It's terrifying and exhilarating at once, a choice that will change my life irrevocably. I think of my father, of how he chose principles over safety, truth over convenience. I think of Clara and her quiet strength, of Leo and his courage to walk away from everything to do the right thing. I think of Patricia Wright and her sacrifice, and I think of myself, of the woman I've become in these last 6 months, stronger and more confident than I ever imagined I could be. Yes, I say, finally, seeing pure joy light up Dante's face. Yes, I will marry you, but with one condition. He laughs, pulling me close. Of course there's a condition. You wouldn't be you without conditions. What is it? We keep doing the work we started, I say seriously, helping witnesses, exposing corruption, using the Rosetta family's resources to make a real difference. Your world may operate in the shadows, but we can bring light to parts of it. Dante kisses me again, and when we pull apart, there's promise in his eyes. We have a deal, Abigail Carson. You bring light to my world, and I'll make sure that light is never extinguished. Clara chooses that moment to walk in, stopping in the doorway with a radiant smile. Finally, she exclaims in Italian, then switches to English. I was starting to think you two would never see the obvious. We have a wedding to plan. The following months are a whirlwind of preparations, but also of meaningful work. The foundation in Patricia's name helps its 10th witness start over safely. Dante and I work together to turn more of the Rosetta family's businesses into fully legitimate operations. And I, finally, visit my father's grave, no longer carrying shame for his name, but pride in his legacy. On the wedding day, held on the lakeside property with views of the frozen Champlain, I look around at the gathered crowd. There are Rosetta family members, allies from other families, even a few honest FBI agents Leo knows. It's a strange mix of worlds, but somehow it works. Clara is crying with happiness. Leo looks uncomfortable in a tuxedo, but genuinely happy, and Dante looks at me like I'm the most precious thing in the world. When I say my vows, I promise not just to love and honor, but to keep fighting for truth, for justice, for making a difference in the world. And when Dante says his, he promises to protect me, to support me, and to never ask me to be less than I am. They are promises we both intend to keep, foundations for a life built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Later, during the reception, I find myself on the veranda overlooking the lake, reflecting on the incredible journey that brought me here. From terrified witness to fugitive, from diner manager to advisor to an organized crime family, from a woman hiding in the shadows to someone willing to bring light to the darkness. It's a transformation I never could have predicted, but one I wouldn't trade for anything now. Dante joins me, wrapping his arms around me from behind, and we stand like that for a moment, just being. Regret it? He asks softly, echoing the question he asked months ago. I shake my head, leaning back against him. Not for a second. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I'm supposed to do, with exactly the right person by my side. The blizzard that brought Clara to my door feels like a lifetime ago now, but also like yesterday. It was the catalyst that changed everything, that forced me to stop running and start fighting, that brought me a family I chose instead of one I lost. And as I look to the future, to the challenges I know will come and the battles we'll still have to fight, I feel something I haven't felt in a long time. Hope, purpose, and the absolute certainty that, no matter what comes, I won't face it alone. My name is Abigail Rosetta now, and this is my story. The story of how a blizzard, a lost old woman, and a dangerous mafia boss came together to give me back my life. It's not the life I imagined when I was young, not the life my mother would have chosen for me, but it's mine, authentic and true, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.